One day after the Kremlin accused Kyiv of a strike that blew up a fuel depot on Russian soil. Ukraine will neither confirm nor deny their involvement in that. In the meantime, we are getting a clearer picture of the horror left behind as Russian troops move out of some areas. A warning, these images are very graphic. Bodies lining the streets on the outskirts of Ukraine's capital. One person apparently killed while riding a bicycle. This is the result of 5 weeks near constant, intense firefights. And it is also near the site of the Antonov airport. The Russians stormed it on the first day of the war, and this is what it looks like now after Russia retreated. Russia's siege of Mariupol, we should note, is unrelenting. Conditions there unlivable, and yet 100,000 people are still trapped. Local officials say Russian troops are not allowing aid into the city, and getting out is just as difficult. A Red Cross committee left Mariupol today, left for Mariupol today, hoping to aid in the evacuation effort. Now Putin's unprovoked war is starting to affect his own people. Look at this just incredible video here. Video shows utter chaos inside Russian stores as people try to get their hands on sugar and anything else that they can as sanctions are sinking in. CNN's Ed Lavandera joins us now from the port city of Odessa in southern Ukraine. Ed, we just showed for our viewers that video of crowds being dispersed by gunfire and explosions in one Russian-controlled Ukrainian town. Really dramatic footage, and just goes to show you what people are having to deal with when the Russians come in and take over an area and are essentially in charge, and the people try to rise up. Tell us what happened.
Well, this happened in a small town near Zaporizhia, which is incidentally where so many of those people still trapped in places like Mariupol are trying to escape to. This particular small town not too far away from there is still under Russian control, and we see these videos emerging today from this protest from the Ukrainian State Nuclear Agency that had the view of what happened there in the square. So imagine the bravery of Ukrainian citizens coming out to protest the occupying Russian forces there in that city. And after a while during that protest, we were told that flashbangs and gunfire was unleashed on the protesters there in that square. 4 people were injured, several people taken to a hospital with burns, but clearly a terrifying message from Russian forces there in that country against anyone willing to come out there and protest the occupation of that city. And it shows you just how volatile and dangerous the situation remains in some of these areas in southeast Ukraine that are still under Russian control.
Yeah, we're still watching this footage, Ed, and it's just remarkable, looking at it from different angles as to what is, being done to the people in various parts of Russia, and in Ukraine, I should say, Russian-controlled Ukraine. And, you just don't, I guess, fully grasp what people are going through until you see these images finally getting out of certain areas. So it's just remarkable to see this. And Ed, a top military official in Odessa says Russians launched several missile strikes into that region yesterday, closer to where you are. What can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. And to your point there is imagine this is the images that we can see. It's hard to get some of these images out of a place like Mariupol where so many people are still trapped and they can't even get humanitarian corridors out of there. So, another thing to kind of keep in mind there. But also, there are strikes that are continuing to happen in other parts of the country, including here in the southern part of the country. Odessa, of course, as we've reported, a key port city. Last night, about 24 hours ago, 3 missiles were fired at the Odessa region here from, according to military officials here in Ukraine, from the Crimean Peninsula. One military official has said that there were some wounded on the ground. The extent and the clarity of exactly what happened still hasn't quite emerged just yet. But then another Ukrainian military official is also saying that the intended targets of these missile strikes were not hit. So clearly, these strikes continue to happen in targeted specific areas, but there's not a whole lot of level of detail as to exactly what the outcome of all this was. Jim?
All right, Ed Lavandera, thank you very much for that live report. We appreciate it. And joining me now is a Ukrainian Air Force pilot who goes by the call sign Moonfish, which we're using to protect his identity. Moonfish, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. We've seen how ruthless the Russians have been when it comes to bombing civilian areas, when it comes to schools, hospitals, apartment buildings. On a personal level, what has it been like for you to see that level of destruction from the sky as you try to protect innocent people?
Well, again, I'll repeat myself. It is heartbreaking. We are being vastly outnumbered by their jets, and they have pulled out from their territory lots of surface-to-air missiles. And this is basically why those areas for us are unreachable at the moment. And yeah, it's really hard to see that.
And we were just showing some dramatic footage in one Ukrainian city that is controlled by the Russians, and they're using explosives and all sorts of things to scatter protesters, people who are trying to rise up as part of a resistance. If there's a way to show some of that footage again, we can talk about it one more time. Here it is. Moonfish, I'm wondering, would it help if the Ukrainian Air Force, if Ukrainian pilots such as yourself had access to more aircraft? Would you be able to take the fight to the Russians and perhaps prevent some of what we're seeing in some of these areas, take back some of these Russian-controlled parts of Ukraine?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So by obtaining more ground-to-air defense and fighters, we will be able to keep their bomber jets, fighter jets away from our territory, and thus we will create better ground for our ground forces, so for them to advance and take back control of those cities. And we are really looking forward for that.
And Russia is accusing Ukraine of an airstrike that blew up a fuel depot on Russian soil. Perhaps you've seen some of this in the news over the last couple of days. Your country will not confirm or deny this attack. But if it does turn out to be a Ukrainian strike, how do you feel about that kind of move, attacking Russia on its own turf, taking the fight to the Russians?
Yes, I have seen that footage. It's really hard to say. It was early morning hours, and really hard to say whose helicopters those were. But if it indeed were Ukrainian helicopters, I would not I would not regret it. Like, they are doing it every day and night, and they are ruining our infrastructure. And I believe that depot is really close to Kharkiv. It is really close to Kharkiv. They are probably using it to fuel their tanks.
Right, and that's been a huge part of this, those Russian tanks coming into various parts of the country, especially in the eastern part of Ukraine. British intelligence, as you know, Moonfish, says Russian soldiers are short on weapons and morale, that the Russians are refusing to carry out orders, in some cases sabotaging their own equipment, even accidentally shooting down their own aircraft. Have you seen some of this reports? Does some of that surprise you? And have you been able to see any signs of this from the skies? Are you seeing abandoned Russian equipment? And what does that look like when you see it from above?
Well, honestly, I have not seen lots of that equipment from the sky when flying out there. First of all, because those areas are, like I mentioned, highly congested with surface-to-air missiles of their own. And, secondly, I can clearly see that their bombers often or either unable or maybe don't want to choose real good military target, which is part of military infrastructure, our troops. They often drop stupid bombs from like 6,000-8,000 meters, and you cannot hit exactly that. They clearly afraid of surface of man pads. They've had a lot of losses from it, and it clearly shows their low morale to choose that tactic. I mean, among the pilots.
No question about it. And Moonfish, finally, it's been more than a month now into this war. Have you had a chance to think about everything that's happened to your country? What are your thoughts now that you know, that your country is now a month into this fight, doing quite well. I mean, the whole world has just been inspired by the courage of the Ukrainians and people like yourself. But you've seen so much destruction on your end of things. What are your thoughts?
Well, I actually have a lot to say about that. I have some message, which is this evil man with the red button and his regime will not stop in Ukraine if this regime and his army will not be defeated here right now in Ukraine. And over pressure of sanctions, over their military defeat on Ukrainian soil is the only way to do that. Because if not, they will continue to, they will be a threat to the entire world. And with that said, I think that the most wise thing to do for the rest of the world, for United States, for NATO countries, would be to arm us to the teeth so that we can fight them and eventually take back their territories. I think our victory combined with sanction pressure, they will collapse. That will crush them. And until that happens, us and the entire world will be living in a constant threat.
All right. Well, Moonfish, many thanks to you for what you do. Good luck in the skies. Thanks very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up.